right, and welcome back, my nomads. Welcome back to another Bitcast. It's your boy, and I'm here with Zach again. What's going on, Zach?
Hey, how you doing, man? I got a question for you before
What's
we
up?
get started on everything. So you remember how, I don't know, 6 months ago when Sam Bankman-Fried got arrested, we were like, okay, movies definitely in the works, show,
Mm-hmm.
anything like that, right?
Probably at Hulu, yeah.
Now, before I get to my main question, do you think when something is like real events like that, like people have kind of like lost interest in something like that because it was 6 months ago?
I think the general population probably, yeah, but you know, people like you and I, we're like, yo, when's the camera start rolling, you know?
Do you think that he would make a lot of money even in prison selling his rights to the story?
Would he make a lot of money? I don't
Or would
exactly.
anyone be interested in paying him for that?
Oh, for his rights?
Yeah.
I don't know if you have to generally do that. I'm thinking of what's it called? Social Network. Um, Everybody who was supposedly in the movie said that that was not accurate. Even Aaron Sorkin himself was like, "Yeah, I just write a good story, you know, based around the events." Kind of like what he did. He wrote that Steve Jobs one, and he said the
Right,
same
yeah.
thing. You know, he
Who was
fabricated
it?
some things.
She like pretended to be rich and she did like a whole Ponzi scheme and she's in prison. I forget her name. Netflix paid her like 250 grand of her story for her rights so they can actually say like true events thing and all that stuff's like a documentary. I wonder if it'll be the same thing. Now, my main question is, right, we've kind of talked about this whole whistleblower and the alien thing.
Hmm.
If this thing comes out the way it does, right, and then there is like verbal confirmation that alien life exists by the government, right? How fast do you think we'll have like a Pearl Harbor equivalent type of movie for something like that?
For aliens. Um, if they did make a movie like that, I would think I think it would be more along the lines of like that Snowden movie that was starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
It wasn't that bad.
And no, I didn't see it, but I wonder if it would go the same route as that movie, whereas no one really watched it, as opposed to if it was like kind of like a Oliver Stone W or a Social Network from Aaron Sorkin and David.
Oliver Stone does his due diligence though.
Oh
Sorkin, not
yeah.
so much like that when it comes to that stuff. It's very sensationalized. No, it's true, and he would be the
Oh yeah,
first to
yeah,
admit it.
yeah, yeah. Sorkin for sure. He'll tell you himself. He just wants to write a good story, even if it's very loosely based on a public figure or public figures. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like that whole thing in Steve Jobs is I forgot what he Jobs starring Michael Fassbender. The Sorkin
Oh,
said that
right.
whole daughter storyline thing was he fabricated that himself, like just to make it like a good story. So I'm like, I
Army
mean,
Hammer should be an alien movie.
do we let that guy back in? You know,
Well,
I think you
he was
cross the
not found
line when you
guilty
eat
of
people.
anything. I mean, regardless, they didn't press charges because there wasn't enough evidence, right? But that documentary, so to speak, on Netflix was pretty indicting. If you haven't seen it, I would suggest, and it's pretty wicked. I
So
loosely.
speaking of indictments, I gotta ask you this. We'll go to the 15 mark. I gotta ask you this. So, you and I have had our words about the Jonathan Major situation off camera, off site. Now with all this stuff that's come out, and I sent you something the other day
Yeah,
with Issa Rae talking about, with Ezra Miller
right.
and stuff. And I kind of said some of the same things. What do you think now, after some time has passed? We don't have that much new information, but has your mind changed, or do you still feel the same?
Well, I mean, look, you know how I am, dude. Take your pick on how I am. I'm very consistent with this message until you're found guilty, even though it wasn't criminal, right? This is a civil thing,
Mhm.
right? Am I not mistaken? So the I guess what's the word I'm thinking of? The burden of proof for you to be found guilty in civil is a lot looser than it is for criminal. So even if he was found guilty of doing something like that, regardless, you can make it a lot more like emotional argument to get found guilty and pay damages and stuff. It's the same thing with Andrew Tate. It's the same thing with anyone else. Justin Roiland, right? Ultimately, they're found. There isn't any kind of evidence proven otherwise. Like, I just feel like my issue, I've told you this before. Disney's inconsistent treatment of this type of thing is what infuriates me. And I will say Justin Roiland with letting go, he had to let go of Rick and Morty, right? And Johnny Depp. And I thought after the Johnny Depp case being as open and as public as that thing was, do you think they would learn their lesson? And Gun too with the tweet jokes, right? From like 10 years
I was
ago.
about to say
That's
that
what
with Gun.
you would think you
How
would
they
learn your
jumped the
lesson
gun on
because
that.
Justin Roiland makes a ton of money for them. And the fact that he has to vacate the show that he co-created, that's huge, blows my mind. But the fact that they backed Majors, and we know why, right? Because he's like the backbone of this whole new villainy for the Avengers thing, right? And that's, you can't recast something like that now. But it's just, to me, like, money talks, dude. You know what I mean? At the end of the day. And then they were the first ones to offer Johnny Depp a role back. And he said, nah, F you guys, goodbye. I don't need you.
As he should.
You know? And of course.
Yes,
But
as he should.
it's inconsistent.
But
It bothers me to
you
the
say they
core. What about
backed
you?
Jonathan Majors. I haven't seen anything about them backing him. I just seen
Well,
that
they haven't
Disney has
fired
been
him.
really quiet.
That's me. They haven't fired him because when the Roiland thing came out, literally within a week, they let him go. And for what? For something he was even. The judge said there is so much minuscule evidence that he threw it out. And we're talking about a California judge. All right. So it's not like it's one of those good old boy type of judges, grease the palms, and that's it. Like, the Me Too thing is what started, that's a heavy epicenter of that type of ideology in California. And they just like, now throw it out. So you get what I'm saying? Like, I'm kind of bothered by that. It's just not right,
But
because
Disney
here's the
has been all over the place. Period.
on everything. Oh, I know.
Yeah,
Still,
it's very hard to follow what they're doing and what their
what do you think is going to
problem is.
happen from this, right? Like, what do you think the threshold's going to have to take? Because they let go of Depp and Roiland. Let's just use these two examples for far less, right, in terms of allegations. And Majors isn't gone.
See, I
Why?
think because, yeah, that's true, especially with Depp. I think because they have jumped the gun so much that with Majors, they're too afraid to do anything. So they're
But
not
the
even
Roiland
talking
thing was
about it.
after Majors, though.
You said
That's the
what?
thing. The Justin Roiland thing was after Majors, though. That's the thing.
Well, the Majors thing isn't over yet, though.
I know it's not,
It's still
but
going on.
you would think they would reach out Olive Ridge for Justin Roiland. I use him because Adult Swim's part of the Disney network, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he wasn't found guilty of anything. You would think they would extend Olive Ridge. Yeah, come on back, whatever. And that hasn't happened.
Oh, no, wait. Adult Swim is Warner Brothers.
No, they're part of the Disney.
About to look that up.
Adult Swim is definitely part of the Disney
Because I
family
know
umbrella.
Hulu is owned, well,
That's why they
majority is
can do,
owned
because
by
Rick and
Disney.
Morty does a lot of Star Wars references because of that.
Because I know Hulu is owned mainly by Disney. Oh yeah, it's owned by Warner Brothers. Adult Swim. Yeah, because I know Adult Swim is part of Cartoon Network, but
Right.
and Cartoon Network's owned by Warner Brothers, so that's why I figured it was owned by Warner Brothers. So yeah, it's majority owned by Warner Brothers. Yeah.
So how are they able to?
So the Justin Roiland thing got nothing to do with Disney.
Okay, so how? Anyway, I guess I made that mistake. I'll take that back. I was just curious because Rick and Morty does a lot of Disney equivalent like things that you can't mention without having some type of rights to that. right? So I was just under the assumptions like, all right, is Adult Swim part of that? Like, how else do they have like mentioning lightsabers, sound effects, things that you can't use
Well,
without
there's
their
a fair
permission, right?
use, there's a loose fair use rule where it's like if you're such a big pop culture influence that people can mention it in a parody such way or satire way, but
So
they
it's
can't,
satire rule.
but you can't make like for instance, I know when people make fan-made Star Wars content on YouTube, Disney will lay the hammer down if they try to monetize it. Disney's like, no, it's got to be free or you can't make it. So
Right.
Disney's pretty stingent about their stuff, but because they're so ingrained in the pop culture zeitgeist, you can like as parody. I mean, like for example, we're talking about Adult Swim, Robot Chicken. One of our favorite thing, one of our favorite things about Star Wars was the Star Wars Robot Chicken specials. They can do that because it's out of parody and satire, and you know it's a joke, under fair
Right,
use,
right, right.
or maybe it's not
Okay,
fair use, but
that
maybe
makes
something
sense. All right,
else.
so let's just go. So this is going to bolster my point even more then. All
Hmm.
right. Let's use Ezra Miller as a reason. Let's compare the two then, because if we're gonna go Warner Brothers, and I stand corrected by my Disney and Rick and Morty thing, Justin Roiland and Ezra Miller. First off, Ezra Miller was found guilty of this stuff. They
Thank
couldn't find him.
you.
He was running away because he was grooming an American Indian child minor on a reservation in the
Yep,
Midwest. I forget somewhere. I think it's like Wyoming. It doesn't matter, right?
something
It's
like
on a
that.
reservation, and minor status is different, especially at the age on a reservation. And they couldn't find him to serve him. What does that say? Because he
Not
was
to
running on
mention,
purpose.
not to mention, before he was cast as the Flash, he had issues with the law. After he was cast as the Flash, he
Having
was
issues.
caught on camera with witnesses beating women, like putting his hands on women, da da da. And that's when I started to
But
hear
they didn't
that
fire him,
chatter.
and they had this stupid Flash movie come out.
You feel me?
Where's this?
My issue right now isn't, well, maybe it is, but my issue is where's that same energy that everybody has for Jonathan Majors? Why is not that same energy not for Ezra Miller? Jonathan Majors is losing all these roles and losing all this money. The only thing he really has right now is Disney because they're trying to see where the trial goes. And I'm like, where's that same energy for
Would
Ezra
they
Miller?
fire him though? Disney. So I guess my whole perspective of the Disney thing changed, because if Johnny Depp, they launched that too early. So maybe they really did learn their lesson on that.
Yeah, I think they're just scared. They don't want to make any rash decisions before the results of the trial comes out because they messed up with Gunn, they messed up with Depp, they messed up with
And Gun wasn't even
Gina
that bad. It was a
Carano.
joke.
You said
You
what?
know what I mean? And Guns wasn't even that bad. It was a joke from like 10,
From
15 years
10
ago.
years ago, bro. And now that it's passed, it's like even more than 10 years, maybe
It's more like
closer to
13 or
20.
14. Seriously,
Yeah,
yeah,
13.
dude, that's what I'm saying. Like,
It's
come on.
it's crazy, and he apologized for it before they even found the joke. Like, like it doesn't
Hey,
make
it's
sense.
their loss.
Yeah, because you could tell after Guardian 3, he's like, I'm so done with Disney. I'm done. I got my own thing with DC, and he's a huge fan of everything. DC, Marvel, comics, whatever, writing novels. He's a fan of everything, and he's a deep fan.
Disney is still trying to pick up the pieces of the Chapek ruling when he was CEO, and Iger's just had to come out of retirement just to fix this. And this is just one of the many boneheaded things that he did that they're like looking at this now, like, seriously, like, they're
Yeah, like
huge,
Peter
right?
Pan and
So
Wendy, that thing, that was definitely a Chapek decision.
no, exactly. But it's just they're going to be feeling this for a long time, and there's not going to be a financial recovery anytime soon. I'll say that. They're not going to
Nah.
fall. They're too big. But in terms of them losing money, I think they alienated, like the Bud Light thing, right? You alienated your base, that you just didn't read the room, and you just don't know who you're trying to like appeal to. At a certain point, people are like, look, we're just tired of this crap. And he just did one thing after another, and now they're fighting with state of Florida and Rob DeSantis, and that's not going away because that's part of his presidential platform thing, and that launches him into stardom. So like, it's just a never-ending thing. And I really feel
Exactly.
bad for Iger because he seemed like he understood what he had to do, and that was just play Switzerland. You know what I mean? And he did a good job, but I
Yeah.
don't think he has the magic wand. See what I did there with Disney to fix it, you know?
Nah.
And it sucks because Disney has such good quality content, but I mean, guys, look, if Iger wants to quit, I'll take it. And I'm telling you right now, Kathleen Kennedy, you'd be the first one to be fired.
At this point, I think the infection has infested the body so bad. You just need to purge the force with a great burn of a great blaze and let it grow back. I just mixed two metaphors together. It doesn't matter. I have
Wow,
dad
that's
brain right
impressive.
now.
But dude, this is perfect because you know, when we did this, we wanted to talk about like Batman as as a whole, right? And I rewatched the Batman, the Robert Pattinson one, right? And it, I'm going to make a bold statement here, like I did with Rogue One, and we kind of made that point. It's best Star Wars movie. It's the Batman, one of the best Batman movies ever, and you can make the argument that it is.
Yes, yes. I just want to say, DC was doing a funny thing where they were rebooting all of their properties, and they were
Mhm.
only rebooting it with adding a "the" in front of them. The Suicide Squad, the Joker, the Batman.
I'd even
Next
think
thing you
about
know, it's
that,
going to
dude.
be the Shazam. So,
Oh no, don't
uh,
do that. Shazam's okay, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
but yeah, the Batman is one of the greatest Batman movies that we've had. And I remember when this was announced and it was supposed to originally be Ben Affleck and his ideas seemed great. Then when he left, I was like, who are we gonna get? Because I love Ben Affleck's Batman. I think he's a great director and storyteller. Then they announced Matt Reeves, and I was like, yes.
Yeah, but Robert Pattinson though, as Bat, we were all skeptical
I was
of
not.
that.
I was not. I learned my lesson after Heath Ledger's Joker. I said, just wait until the movie comes out before you judge, and also watch their other stuff before you judge. I
When I saw
watched.
Tenet, I was bought into the Robert Pattinson thing because he was the only good
Yeah,
part of that movie. And
yep.
as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, maybe Batman's going to be good, but it's he still didn't have the pedigree. It was like, it's not so much like I didn't think that he would play the role. It was just like, okay, you have this kind of guy. What kind of Batman are we expecting then? You
A
know?
Kurt Cobain kind of bad Bruce Wayne. And those were the exact words of Matt Reeves. He
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah,
go
yeah.
for that
Yeah, no, he's
Kurt
emo,
Cobain
dude.
look and uh aesthetic, for the character.
I didn't mind it so much. I felt like at any moment he was going to pop on some Fall Out Boy into Batmobile and just play. He had the emo streak. I love it.
I thought it was a bold move to have this Batman be the be the one to break the trend of having a different voice. I mean,
I loved
his
it.
Bruce Wayne and Batman voice was basically the same, and I thought it was funny because in the beginning of the movie, he shows up as Batman at the door, and he's like, "You know who I am?" And they're like, "Yo, get out of here!" He beats them up. He gets inside the club, and then towards the end of the movie, he shows up as Bruce Wayne, and with the same voice and demeanor, he's like, "You know who I am?" I'm like, no one connected the dots at all. Like, come
You know
on, man.
why? It's because there's so much to people's defense.
Mm.
There's a lot in between the at the beginning and the end,
Oh
and
yeah,
you're
it's
just
three
you
hours long,
complete. It's a blur, and you're like, oh
and
man.
in the movie, it's like days have gone by, like maybe a week or two.
I seriously thought it was a continuation of the same like 2 days. You know
Oh,
what I
actually,
mean?
it
Like
might be. It might be.
that's just how it felt. It was just like you didn't because it was Halloween, right?
Yeah, it was
So you had
Halloween.
that, but it doesn't show like a lot of times gone by on anything else. Like he's just up and at it.
I think it is. I think you're right. I think it's like 2, 3 days of the
He's the
whole
best
movie.
Bruce Wayne by far.
Bob Kane. one of the creators of Batman said that at the time he was alive, he said Val Kilmer was the best Bruce Wayne.
I
And
can't. I can't.
he said it because of the psychological stuff that was going on in Batman Forever. And I think if Bob Kane were alive today, he would say something similar to this Batman with this Bruce Wayne.
Because it shows how smart he is, right? Like, because here, let's just we got to do this. You got to separate Batman and Bruce Wayne because they're separate for a
Mm,
reason,
hmm.
and the movie does a good job partitioning the two. That they're two separate people. You know what I mean? Batman as a whole, like this, like, look, you've said this time and time again. It's not like he's got a whole bunch of like huge tech stuff that's giving him an advantage. He's new into the game. He's still trying to, get his bearings.
Yeah, this
But
is year
he's
two.
relying on his resourcefulness and his ability to problem solve, which has never been broadcasted till now. The only time you see problem solving is like the animated series, right?
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, and
Why?
I
Why is
like
this new? Why did it take so long to get to that point to show this?
because um you know, Batman, he has many facets of what makes him Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And what's more appealing in live action is the, beat up batarang. Well, I'm a little disappointed that they in live action Batman movies they never use the batarang that much, except for Zack Snyder's, which is why Ben Affleck's Batman is on my top, if not my top Batman. But
Because of gadgets?
huh?
Because of the gadgets?
No, because he actually used the batarang in a
Oh,
fight,
Jesus.
and he used it brutally. But
Yeah.
so
But he killed people, though.
it's a lot more entertaining. It's a lot easier and a lot more entertaining to do the whole brutality of Batman, the fighting. And when Matt Reeves was announced and he took his time with the script, people were like, "When is it coming out? When is it coming out?" I thought it was dope that he said, "Look, I'm trying to make a detective story." And I was like, "Yo, that's dope," because we haven't gotten that in so
I loved
long.
it, dude. It was so episodic. Every time there was a break, you're like, okay, let me just. It was formatted like a book and it was really well done. It was very Quentin Tarantino like, without actually saying chapter, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah,
And you could
because you could
tell
tell
there
there's
was,
separate parts to it.
yeah, you got to treat them as all separate things and you just put it together.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, what I think is underrated that people don't talk about in here, this is probably the best casted Batman movie,
Yes. Yes. Ooh.
except for one thing. I don't know if we
Ooh.
want to talk about it now or
I
not.
think the Dark Knight trilogy is pretty close with casting,
It
but
is
go
pretty
ahead.
close. I have the same complaint with both, and
Oh, okay.
that's
What's up?
Catwoman's casting.
Okay.
We already know where I'm going with this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know. I don't know if anybody else
All
knows.
right, so if anyone doesn't know, I've had some issues with Catwoman in terms of the casting. Take it and the TV show, whatever, all of it.
The TV show.
Not the TV show. I'm sorry. The previous series, and then there was the.
Oh, the Dark Knight
I was
trilogy.
thinking of Batgirl, by the way, not
Oh,
Catwoman.
Backer.
My bad. Yeah, that was bad too. And then they did the movie, and that got canceled. But you need a nice line between for Selena Kyle. You need appealing, sexy, and edgy, which is kind of what you said, which makes sense.
Because she uses her
But
sexuality as a weapon.
a weapon, right? Exactly, and that's what draws Bruce Wayne to her. And because it's something different, and he's not able to get it so easily. And that's
Yeah,
what
someone on
baits
his
him
level who's like she we see it in the comics and in the cartoons. She actually plays him from time to
all the
time. Like she
time,
tricks him plenty times.
like the previous series did with what's her name? Raja Ghul's daughter,
Oh, Talia al Ghul.
Talia. Thank you. She did that, what she does, right? But Slingy Kyle does that too, and they didn't do that in Christopher Nolan's version, right?
Nah. Mm-mm.
Like there was no dynamic of that at all, which is
Nah.
kind of a shame because that's one of my favorite, I think, comic book relationships in all the mediums.
Um, I, in her defense, well, maybe not in her defense. One aspect I did like about Christopher Nolan's Batgirl is that you saw she
Catwoman.
was low key out of her depth. You saw her vulnerability because she was legit scared, and that's not a side we see of Catwoman. But I would have liked to seen the more traditional Catwoman. We haven't really seen that in live action besides Michelle Pfeiffer, Catwoman in Batman Returns. Yeah, Batman Returns.
God, we're going way back. I
But
like that though. She did a good job.
yeah, we haven't seen that since.
No.
I mean,
Who
Eartha
plays
Kitt
it?
all the
Who
way
can do
back
it?
in what the '60s. Eartha Kitt did that with Catwoman, but like you don't really see that. And looking back at the Batman, the last one that came out, I can see what you're saying. I do think what's her name did a pretty good job,
Zoe
but
Kravitz.
Zoe Kravitz, thank you. But yeah, her sexuality wasn't really used as a weapon, and when it kind of was, it was very strange because she was using it against the guy she knew who was her father. So it
Yeah.
was kind of
That was a
their
weird.
relationship was very strange. So I'm like, does he know that's his daughter or
He
does he
knows,
not?
and he comes to admit that, right? Well, does I don't does he?
No,
No, she
she
admits it, but
tells him.
so yeah, right. So he has a defense, but she doesn't anyway, but it's just
It's kind of weird, but yeah. But
there's only a
yeah.
couple people I can think of, right? One's
Hmm.
doing Harley Quinn. So
Hmm.
she's out. She's
Hmm.
got both, and she's perfect at it. And you can take the sexiness and edginess out of the way, and she's just a fantastic actress, right? So, but there's not many.
But
And
at the same time, would they even do that? The way Hollywood's going now, I don't think it would be allowed for a Catwoman in this space, a true Catwoman in this space.
what do you mean? In terms of like
Like, because they
using
don't,
her,
the
yeah,
way female characters are being written now, you know, they're
not an
not,
archetype anymore. They're kind of
yeah,
branching out and doing other
there's no more
things. Yeah.
femme fatales, because it's almost like these
Right.
writers are too afraid to write them, or they're like, oh, women would think that these characters are beneath them or something, or these are set in these characters are setting women back to the Stone Ages or something like that. But I don't think we would be allowed to get a
But
Catwoman like
now
that.
it's just like now it kind of sucks. Like you kind of just notice like two women who are friends all to end up hooking up now. Like that's the thing too. It's like I'm just waiting for it, right? Like with Ted Lasso, it's just like the friends got they uh, Keely and then whatever her name is, it was her boss. I'm like, oh, they're
Oh,
gonna end up hooking
really?
up. Like, yeah, I was like,
I'm not up to date
I'm
on Ted Lasso, but
oh, I'm sorry, but anyway, I'm just
nah,
using
you're
that as
fine.
an example, right? But it's like, come on, like, why do I feel like this is how it's heading? It's not any different than like doing the Bechdel test, where it's like anytime there's a woman and a man, they can't be friends, and they always ultimately end up being an item.
I mean
And
that's in the Batman, the what's it called? Catwoman, Zoe Kravitz, her character with the I guess you can call her a call girl. They're
yeah, but
together.
it's like it's not any different now. That's just a new variation of it. You're just checking off a box, but it's
True.
like so you're objectifying women the same way, but you're just replacing a man with a woman now. How is that any more empowering? And how is that all you're
Because
making
there's
it
no different
worse?
power dynamic in that, I guess.
You're just making it worse. So you're just saying two women can't be friends without hooking up now. That's what it comes down to.
I guess, man.
Tell
But
me how that makes sense.
I will say, and my second point is because she tells him off in a very like like a point where he looks at himself like, oh snap, I do have that about myself. Where he like judges somebody or her friend, and she's just like, oh, you definitely grew up rich, and he's kind of taken aback by that. And that leads to my one point of I like that this showed a less seasoned Batman. I like that this was only year two of him being Batman, to where you actually see the growing pains where some things he doesn't solve, some things he comes upon. He's like, oh snap, I made the wrong call on this, and even
Especially
the
with the
El
Jeffrey
Rata
Wright thing,
Lata,
figuring out, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And he gets beat up a lot.
And I someone told me like they didn't like the movie because he kept getting beat up, and I was like, well, he was. dishing out, beating up too, man. I mean, he walks in the corridor,
But
bulletproof.
he
They're
is
just shooting at him.
realistic,
He's
though.
just
You can't take out
knocking him out.
15 dudes without getting punched. Let's just be real. Doesn't matter how good of a fighter you are.
Thank
Bruce
you.
Lee still got beat up sometimes, even though he was the best fighter ever. It's just
Yeah,
nature of the game.
yeah, and I was like, you just can't write off a 3 hour movie because you think he's not getting enough hits in, man. You gotta look at
You mean like
all
The Rock and Vin
everything.
Diesel and Fast and Furious? If anyone doesn't know, they actually had people, their agents actually counting how many times they got hit and how
Yes.
much they're giving out because they didn't want to give up the alpha mentality.
Which one was that?
Five,
Fast Five
four?
or Six?
No, no, no,
Where
no. I think that was because he stopped after a certain amount because The Rock, and Tyrese Gibson got into it.
because it was Seven was one of my favorite ones, and that had Jason Statham. He was the villain in that one. And then the one before that, Six, was Shaw, his younger brother. So I think it was Six.
They're
Because
both
Five
Shaw.
is when they were just trying to escape.
It was Luke Evans
Yeah, Luke
and
Evans.
yeah, and he died, right? And
Yeah.
then he came back. No, I think that was
No, he
five.
got beat up.
No, he died because
Luke
that's when
Evans?
Gal Gadot's character died. Remember,
Yeah, her character died, but Shaw didn't die.
Luke Evans' character died. What are you talking about?
Nah,
That's why Jason Statham's
remember he
character.
was in Seven. He was in
Oh,
the
dude, I'm
hospital.
sorry.
He's like in a coma. He's not
Okay,
dead.
but anyway, Jason Statham thinks he's dead, and he goes after him and kills him. Remember, because at the end
Yeah.
credits, he kills
Han.
homeboy Han. Yeah, in the race in Tokyo. So
Yeah, for those who don't know, that fight between The Rock and Vin Diesel in Fast Six, their
five.
egos are so big
That's five.
that their agents and their team were counting each punch to make sure everybody had enough of the same punches. And then all of a sudden, what's his name? Vin Diesel wins. If
Even it
you
wasn't
go
a win,
back and rewatch
kind of
that,
a win.
yeah, if you rewatch that fight, it's pretty even. And then all of a sudden, Vin Diesel's
Vin Diesel does
victorious.
like a flip and just boom, that's that. I'm like, come on, guys,
Yeah,
let's be real. You know,
yeah. And then someone did a meme after like Fast 8 or 9 and was like, "Oh, so you're telling me a mechanic who drives a muscle car beat up elite assassin and an army ranger and just walked off scot free for each of those fights?"
of
I'm like,
course. Yeah,
with a wrench. He had a wrench for both.
yeah, bro. You beat up the Rock. I mean, but anyway, point remains the same though. It's just I like it's the human aspect, which is why you can kind of relate. Christian Bale's, you're like, okay, this guy's so far removed from reality. You
Yeah, I
like
didn't
just
like the
it
Bruce Wayne in the
follows.
Dark Knight trilogy. I didn't like him. He was
No,
so
because
up his
he's like
own, you know. But what's it called? Well, that being said, Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne was kind of a dick to anybody and everybody, even Catwoman. Like you see how he,
in Alfred.
yeah, and Alfred, and you see how he treated people, and then by the end of the movie, he sees like, oh, I gotta soften up how I am with people because like what I'm doing ain't working. He's pushing Catwoman, and then she's just like, I'm out, and he doesn't get that mission finished, and then he's pushing Alfred away. Alfred almost dies, and then he's like, "Oh, I I felt fear for the first time because I was afraid you might die." You
Right.
know,
He's in
and
his
then
mid-20s in this, right? Bruce Wayne.
yeah, yeah, he's still a young cat, and then at the end he sees like people could see him as a hero, and he has to really change. But I want to ask you this because I am not a fan of the end. I'm not a fan of the third act of the Batman at all, and I'm not a fan of the end.
When they drive off their separate ways and
No, I'm not a fan of the end of how Batman. Let me explain. So the third act, I feel like, was just tacked on. I feel like the studio was like, "Yo, you got all this great think piece essay type stuff in the film. We need some action." So they just threw the third act of the flooding that they didn't really allude to in the beginning of the movie, so it just came out of nowhere. Um,
I
then
was unsure about that.
I it just felt so half-assed. And then on top of that, I felt like the end was meant for a different superhero because Batman is all about the shadows. Batman is all about using fear against his enemies, and then all of a sudden you're talking about Batman at the end of this movie realizes he has to be a symbol of hope. I'm like, this isn't a Superman movie. This is a Batman movie. So why is Batman talking about I need to be a symbol of hope? I need to show these people a brighter day.
which
And I'm like,
is exactly which they do in like the sunrise before she
yeah.
drives off and he drives off, right? And they go their separate ways. It's like, that's tacky.
So I'm like, is this going to turn into like the Adam West Batman where he's talking to the commissioner on speed dial and they're like, "Hey, how you doing? I'm going to save the city, Gotham." And then they're like doing the 70s dance disco and then he's like, "Pow, boom." I'm like, "Nah, like my bet I mean, of course every character changes, but over the years Batman has become a symbol of fear. He works in the shadows. He's all about, just badassery.
But
And
this is also early Batman, so we have to see an evolution of his cynicism too.
but I feel like he already has that cynicism in this
Not
movie.
because he's Batman, just because of his pity party about his parents. No, I'm serious though. He's a
Yeah,
spoiled kid in this. You know, like he
yeah,
hasn't evolved really into that. Like, so you're a
yeah. He's not even
billionaire.
Bruce Wayne the philanthropist yet.
No, he's none of that, dude. And that's why it's like, here's the thing: you have to equate young. See, that's why I might change your mind with the ending. You have to equate the fact that he's young with being idealistic.
Mm,
There's a phase, like there's a natural evolution
mm.
to where he's at ultimately. You can't have that without him being idealistic that he can save the world. You
Do
know,
you think
because
do you think you get do you think you get this young Robert Pattinson Batman, and with the ending of this movie it could potentially lead to a older, more cynical, dark Batman like we got with Ben Affleck's Batman.
maybe no, by his 30s, he's probably like, you know what, after this whole thing, like tired of getting beat up, all the women around, they leave, all that stuff. I'm serious. It's true though. After
Yeah, I
dealing with that
mean,
for 5 or 6 years, you're like, you know what?
we
Get
are
this.
getting the Batman too, so it's going to be interesting to see where
We
they
haven't
take
seen
it.
CEO Bruce Wayne either. We need to see that. He's just refusing to even uphold his family's legacy. He thinks his family legacy is just running around in a cave, right? And it's
Yeah,
not. And then he's like, I got to send him hope. And then there has to be natural steps for him to say, like, you know what? I'm just going to be untrusting, distrustful of the world, which is true. Like, he even holds, like, even when he gets Robin and he trains everyone and all that stuff multiple times. Like he even holds them at arm's reach for a reason.
yeah,
Like he has no ability to actually connect to anyone on a deep level.
yeah.
He
Even with the
has to
Justice
evolve to
League,
that
who they
further.
thought they were team members, he has a failsafe for every single Justice League member, just in case they go evil. He knows how to take each and one of them down,
Yeah, no,
which is
exactly.
wild.
But he. This is the idealistic version, just like anything else. He's like, hey, it's my job, and then he realizes he's taken way too much more than he can handle. It burns him out, and then he progresses to the dream version of Batman and the Zack Snyder cut.
Now, I don't wanna gloss over this point. I want to give a big shout out to the cinematographer Greg Fraser for the Batman. Now, this Batman visually is amazing. It's one of the reasons why everyone gravitated toward this movie. They were giving us visuals we never seen before, and that's a credit to the cinematographer Greg Fraser, who's done things like The Mandalorian, Dune. He's done so many great Rogue
I
One,
didn't know that.
Rogue
It
One.
makes sense though because it's so natural. Like they use a lot of natural effects, like what Mandalorian. Like Mandalorian is probably one of the first Star Wars things that you see that's natural. Like
Hmm.
you can see how like the flight is even. Like you're like, wait a minute, this is not all CGI.
Yeah, I mean, Dune, the Rogue One, like you said, he has this style where it's like a naturalization of the visuals. And him and Matt Reeves, I heard, were talking about how, don't be afraid to dirty up your lens because, you know, it gives it a more tactile feel to every shot. and they use a lot of anamorphic lenses to this, which added a lot of bloom to the lights in this movie because
I like that.
this is the first Batman where there, if you really pay attention to it, it's a lot of lights in this Batman. There's not a lot of harsh shadows. It's a lot of light. It's a lot of um I can't think of the word, but I'll just say golden light, like amber
But
light.
it's dark out.
It's dark out, but there's still a lot of light. I mean, we even have Batman outside in the
But
daytime
that's
at the
fine
end.
though. I don't
Yeah,
mind that.
it's fine. That's why I'm like the way they did this, even though there's a lot of light, it's still very like Batman esque. It's still like grim. It's like
Noir. Yeah.
they used the light to hide him in the very few shadows that they had, and then to show his
Like when he's
mind
chasing
state.
the penguin and the penguin's car flips over, and when it's upside down, you see him approaching him. He's
Yeah,
screaming at him. That's
yeah.
fantastic. I love that shot.
And I know a reviewer said, you know, they didn't like when after he walks up in that shot, you see him bend down and look at the penguin. And he was like, because that's not cool, you know, you cut before it gets to that point. But I'm like, at the same time, this is a young Batman. So I thought it was funny they left it in there. I thought it was a choice by the director to leave that shot in there when he's like this. It's like, hey, this is still a young Batman. He's not the dark Batman who's just walking down the corridor while the bad guy's screaming like,
Exactly.
get
Yeah, no,
away.
he's got to exactly because he realizes Batman's a symbol of fear, which he has to grow into, and he has like, look, in order for me to be effective, I have to instill fear.
Hmm. And he's still
You know,
working out the kinks on how to instill that fear. I mean, he gets beat up, he gets shot in this film, but he's still a badass. I mean, he's still knocking people out. He's still like has this badass car that I love that introduction of the Batmobile because you
oh, it's
first get
fantastic.
a glance of it in the Bat Cave, but then when he's starts it and you just hear the engine, and then you realize he stalled out the engine, so then he has to start the car back up again. And you're a car guy, you probably caught that. But someone had to point it out to me. They was like, "Oh, that sound is him stalling out the engine."
Yeah,
He
it's suited
started
up
the-
Lamborghini or something. I think is what it is. Thing's sick, dude. Like I
yes.
really hope they don't go into like the Tumblr version, like in other movies. Like they just have like a more bulked up version of that because that would be so cool.
See, oh, I'm glad you said that. So, um, I don't want them to go in the Tumblr direction either. That's the thing about Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan takes these fantastical ideas and sometimes he just tries to hammer in reality so hard that it's kind of like, come on, bro. Like, why did you make a fat Batmobile? You know, that's what the Tumblr is. And
I mean, it's cool. Don't get me
it
wrong.
is cool. It's practical
It's
for what it does,
just,
but it's like a
but no,
chubby
but for that
Batmobile.
type of Batman though, like it makes sense because he's all about those gadgets.
Yeah,
He's all about all
that's
that
true.
stuff. You
That's
know,
true. He's all about the gadgets. And then but that's why that's another I keep bringing it up, but another reason why I like the Ben Affleck Batman because it feels like he just came straight out of the comic book where he does have those fantastical vehicles, weapons, you know, the fighting style. He doesn't even wear armor, bro. Like Zack Snyder said in an interview, he was like, "This Batman is so seasoned, he doesn't need armor. He's just beating people
and
up
he
and
kills people.
in a regular suit. Like he doesn't need armor." And I was like, "That's so bad. Like you're the only one who thinks that. That's so badass." Like, so you know, I do think, yeah, I hope they go into fantastical and with the announcement that Matt Reeves wants Clayface in the next Batman movie. I'm like, oh, so are they going to add a
Fantastic.
little fantastical, like
You have to.
pseudoscience
That's one
in
of like the
there?
crazy villains of Batman. That's kind of super. I'm not saying supernatural, but supernatural in the sense that like it kind of bends like reality in a lot of ways, and it's really cool.
And I wonder if they're going to make it a little more subtle, where it's kind of like just a humanoid Mystique, where it's not like a big blob, but it's just like
I want
Mystique
him
from
to be. I
X-Men
want
or
it to be
something,
more like a thriller, like a suspenseful, like M Night Shyamalan type of old school movie,
like a
where because Clayface can turn into whoever he
noir.
wants
Yes.
to. You know what I mean? He's like, wait, is he really Clayface? That type of thing. Like, and then he
Yeah,
starts having this like
because Clayface does that thing sometimes. It depends on which Clayface, but if he does the one who's the actor, sometimes he just takes the place of other villains because
I
he
love
likes
it,
the
dude. And
role.
you don't know what's real and what's not. Like that's
Yeah,
so fan. I would love him to go down that road.
that would be dope. Like go throughout the movie thinking it's one guy. Then it's like, oh no, it's Clayface. It was a role of a lifetime, and I had to try it out. And he just punches him in the face. But yeah, that would be dope. I also got to give him another shout out because I shouted out Greg Fraser. I got to give another shout out to Michael Giacchino. I think I'm saying his last name right. The composer of the score for this film, who's done so
Underrated.
many great things, including Rogue One, our favorite Star Wars.
I feel like there's the more you keep mentioning these people, I'm like, holy crap! Like there
It's
is
like they're
so
just hanging
many.
out. They're just hanging
Well,
out as a
no, he
group.
knows how to. He knows like maybe Reese solved Rogue One. He's like, I need these people in the movie one day.
Yeah,
You know what I
man.
mean?
Michael Giacchino with that. And it's funny because when I heard the score for the Batman, when I first saw it, I was like, that sounds like the Darth Vader theme. It's a little bit in there. And I saw someone else said it, and I was like, oh, so I'm not the only one who noticed. But I thought the score was great. You know, I should have won an Oscar, maybe, maybe not. I do think Hans Zimmer should have won an Oscar for The Dark Knight Rises and The Dark Knight, but whatever. But
Hans
yeah,
Zimmer's
Michael
won Oscars.
Giacchino,
Okay, it's not like
huh?
he hasn't won Oscars.
Yeah,
Hans Zimmer is
that's very
like the
true.
guy for like composing in Hollywood. Like, there's no one who even comes close to his
People don't
mastery.
realize how much stuff he's done. I mean, he did freaking The Lion King, bro. The
Wasn't he
1990s
the one?
Lion
He
King.
did Sherlock Holmes. Didn't he like break a
Sherlock,
piano or something
yes,
in Sherlock Holmes to make a
the
certain
dude broke a
sound?
piano for Sherlock
Yeah.
Holmes, put it back together, and played it for the score. I mean, who thinks of that? And it worked.
$1 million piano just gets destroyed, and he's like, you know what? I don't think you understand what's going to come from this. I'm curious. What's your favorite scene in this?
Ooh, what's my favorite scene? I haven't thought of it, but this scene pops into mind. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it resonated with me when Batman goes to see the Riddler in Holding or whatever, the Arkham Asylum, and he thinks that the Riddler knows who he is, and he's just listening to him talk. He's just sitting there hanging back, and then he realizes the look on his face when he realizes the Joker doesn't know who he is. He thinks Batman and Bruce Wayne are separate people. He just look at, he's like, oh,
Are you talking about the Riddler, not the Joker?
oh yeah, yeah, the Riddler, yeah.
Okay, just making
And
sure.
and then there's another reveal when the Riddler realizes Batman is not on his side, and he just loses his mind. He's just going and he's just yelling. You see his whole brain unravel, and he's just going on. I just love that scene
But
how
he
there's
plays
the
Manic
back and
so well,
forth.
though.
Oh yeah, I mean that's Paul Dano. I mean that's what he does.
He just gets crazy,
Hey,
you
you
know.
want a guy like that? You know, in the movie There Will Be Blood, in the movie Prisoners, that's Paul Dano. That's what he plays. But so
Just typecasted.
I and speaking of the Riddler, I just love the direction that Matt Reeves went with this movie. In the direction of the Zodiac Killer, of the movie Seven, where he made it more of
Love that
like
movie.
a killer thriller, where the Riddler, the Riddler has always been kind of like a joke villain, you know, and he turned him into like the Zodiac Killer, and I thought that was a brilliant take to go, especially if you're making a Batman movie that's a detective movie, and you're like, oh, that's a good turn. That's a good way to re-legitimize the Riddler, who's just even in the video games that everybody loves, Arkham Asylum video games. The Riddler is just like an annoyance. Like you don't even have to do his missions if you don't want to. But this time, you're gonna remember the Riddler. Like this dude is like knocking people's heads with blunt objects, and killing people, and cutting their fingers off, and you're like, oh, this guy's serious, man. Like you gotta stop him. And then at the reveal at the end, and you're like, oh, he's been there the whole time. that's that's wild. And he thought Batman was his guy, and then he just loses his mind when he finds out, oh, Batman's not with me. No, we are supposed to be in this together, and da da da. And I just loved it. I love the direction they did, and I heard I saw that they released a Riddler comic based on this character written co-written by Paul Dano. I definitely want to check that out for sure. But how did you feel about the Riddler and the direction that he went?
I liked it because every Riddler is just this super smart guy that gets outwitted by Batman every time.
Yeah, I will say that the riddles in the movie were kind of simplistic, but it
That's the
didn't
point,
take me
though.
away from the
No, because they're simple, but they're not. Because people, you have to think about it, like none of the Riddlers are like you don't need to be a super genius to figure it out. You just need to like have a couple layers of critical thinking, which
Isn't
I
that
will
what a
give you
riddle
probably
is? Like the answer is obvious, and then when you figure out the answer, you're like, oh, why didn't I think of that? Of course it's that, you know. It's not
what
like
does a
Sherlock
liar
Holmes
do
where he
when
was like,
he
this is
said,
a little myth from Africa in the third century, and then this was made. I'm like, how does anyone even know all that stuff?
I think my favorite scene, I'll give you two. I think my favorite one, the one comes to mind. It's kind of like the same thing when Bruce Wayne goes in for the funeral for the mayor,
Yeah.
right? And he goes into public, all the, paparazzi's like, Bruce, and he's just ignoring them. He's just sitting there very introverted,
Mhm.
you can tell he is a recluse,
Yeah,
right? Because he has no
social
public
skills.
persona at all.
Yeah,
None. And I'm very fascinated to see how he grows into like what he's going to be. You know what I mean?
right.
And I feel like it's out of survival he does it just so he can kind of play the part so no one really suspects him to be Batman. But when he goes up to Falcone, right? And Falcone's like, do you know who this guy is? He's the prince of the city. He talks about his dad saved me, and I just like that dynamic because it foreshadows what happens when he finds out what he did for his dad, and he has this like moment. It's like, oh man, my dad's actually a human being and did stuff bad.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up, man. I forgot about that, man. Like, I like the like you said, the human side of it, where, for the longest time, uh Thomas Wayne has been portrayed as like the White Knight. I will give kudos to the Joker, even though I didn't really like that movie. I like how they switched up and made Thomas Wayne just another dickhead politician. But in
Yeah,
this movie,
not a
you got
fan of the movie either.
yeah. Oh, thank you. Every time I say that, someone
It's
thinks I'm
not
crazy.
Joaquin Phoenix's fault. It has nothing to do with him.
No, it has nothing to do with it. But yeah, I like that they did that whole like they dug deep into like the history of um not Bruce Wayne, Gotham, where it's like, oh, Gotham has a history, and guess
No,
what?
no.
His mom was a dang, I can't think, but she's one of those old families, and Bruce Wayne married her, and everybody thought it was a political move, but he actually loved her, and he was trying to protect her. Well, he did this and this, and they mentioned Hush in there. For my comic book fans, they mentioned Hush, but yeah, I thought
But
that
weren't they
was dope.
government too? That's why I like that the Pennyworth show
Hmm.
because it kind of like went into like Alfred when he was finished with his SAS stuff, and then he met Bruce and all the Waynes and stuff at an early age, and he became their protector, so to speak.
Hmm.
What's her name? What's Martha?
Martha,
Martha, right? Um,
Martha.
no, I like this. So when he's having that moment with Falcone, right, and then he goes in, and then all hell breaks loose. When the DA has his bomb strapped to him, and he's
Yeah,
like screaming, like pleading with him. I love that because you've never had such a gritty like moment in any Batman movie. You're like, this dude's got a bomb strapped to him. He's like, you need to tell how much it is for you to worth the look the other way. He's like, what are you talking about? It's like, come on, bro. Really,
yeah,
no. The bomb's on you. Like it's up to you if you want to do it. And he's like, oh, well, you're a dead man. He pleads with him, and I feel like an older version of the Batman wouldn't plead with him. You know what I mean? Like it's just like very rookie things. Like
yeah.
you know what I mean? I like that.
Exactly. The older
It's like, all right,
Batman would have been like, "Nah, I'm gonna find you and I'm gonna kill you." Like, well, not kill you, but he's like, "I'm gonna find you. I'm gonna take you down." Like I could hear Kevin Conroy's voice, R.I.P. R.I.P. I could hear his voice in my head saying that I'm gonna find you and I'm gonna take you down,
yeah,
Riddler.
no, absolutely. And
And
then also the
mhm.
dynamic with Alfred too, showing how intelligent he is with the cipher. And his ability for him to figure things out, like, first off, he's just as smart and capable as Bruce in terms of everything, not just intelligence, but ability to fight and do things too. Like, Alfred's got a very
He
awesome
mentions
past. Like,
that
I
in
know the
this
show's
movie.
over and with Pennyworth, but it does a really good job. Like, this guy's capable. You know, like he's just not some random schmuck that just like hangs out. You know, like he is a capable dude,
Hmm.
and it really shows in the cipher thing. Like, first off, how and then when Bruce like comes back to him and kind of like apologizes by like working on the cipher with him. He's like, well, what if the cipher just use the symbols on the cipher of the letters you already have? And then he zooms out and it's got drive as the thing or
Yeah.
whatever. I'm like, that's awesome. Like I like that. Finally, for once, like you're actually having some thought into it,
Yeah. Yeah,
and that's
definitely.
why it's like that's why I think the casting is good because
Yeah, Andy
um
Serkis as Alfred was perfect because you believe Andy Serkis is a capable dude, like who could take someone down. Like the way he talks with that like gritty British accent, and you're like, oh, this Alfred definitely can knock somebody's head off. And he talks about how he's like, I could train you, but I couldn't raise you. I'm like, oh, so this Alfred definitely did train this Bruce Wayne in at some capacity. So it's like, oh, so you can tell that this Alfred, he really loved this family and he didn't know what to do with this little boy. So he did the only thing he knew he could do was just to train him. And that was a way for him to work out his anger. But instead, Bruce let the anger consume him and he became Batman and da da da.
but Bruce makes the same mistake with Robin and everyone
Yes.
else, which is
Yeah,
beautiful,
with all the
right? Like it's
Robins, the multiple Robins and multiple Batgirls.
so what do
So
you so do you think that it would be wise for them to capitalize on the relationship between him and Catwoman then? Or do you think that's just going to be one of those like
I
we'll
think they
flirt
should
when I
move
see
on
you
from it.
working type of thing?
I think they should move on from it. If they plan to make a trilogy, maybe she can come back in the third one at some point as a reveal or something like that. But I don't want to see like a team up. I don't want to see another dynamic. Only because we have this long history of Batman films where Catwoman keeps showing up. Even though I believe that this was going to be a great movie, when it was announced the villains that would be in it, Catwoman, Penguin, Falcone. I was like, we've seen all these villains before. Like Batman has a huge rogues gallery. Like, let's get
Well,
some other ones.
speaking of which, then what villain do you want to see then?
I mean, we all want to see, not just me, we all want to see Mr. Freeze. After that debacle of what Arnold Schwarzenegger did and the Joel Schumacher Batman and Robin, we want to see Mr. Freeze and we want to see it done
I
well,
want to
like
see
in the
Vin
cartoons.
Diesel play Mr. Freeze
He could. He has the voice for it. He has the stature for it. Would he do it though? I feel like Vin
or Jason
Diesel.
Momoa.
Nah,
What do
nah,
you mean?
nah.
Well, he couldn't do it anyway because he's
Aquaman.
Aquaman. Yeah.
Well, for the time being. But like yeah, like maybe a Mr. Freeze. How did you feel? How do you feel of John Turturro playing Falcone?
Loved it. Have you ever seen Secret Window with
No.
Johnny Depp?
Oh no 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 no.
There's Stephen King short. So it's a Stephen King
I
short
know what you're talking
novel.
about though. I
It's like
saw it.
20
I
years old,
mean,
dude.
I saw pieces of it. Let me say that. I didn't see the
Fantastic.
whole thing.
Falco. So John Turturro plays Johnny Depp's like alter ego in the book in the movie, I should say.
Mhm.
And he's so Johnny Depp's character kills people under this guise that he thinks it's someone else that's stalking him, but it's actually him going into a psychotic break.
Yeah, I know that part. Yeah, I've seen
Fantastic.
pieces of it.
He did. John Turturro did a great job. I love the fact that he played Falco. Who else would have done it? Do you think? You can't
I
pick
think they just would have.
normal mob guys. Like that's not fun. Have guys out of their element.
I think they would have done what so many, including the Dark Knight trilogy, did. Just go the old school route of hiring a seasoned British actor to play Falcone and call it a day. But I like that they didn't do that. They got John Turturro, who has so much range but doesn't get to use it as much. There's a mini series on HBO called The Night Before, where he played a lawyer, covering a guy, Riz Ahmed, covering that character, and it was amazing. And John Turturro has such range. He was in a lot of Spike Lee movies where he played the unlikable character, and I'm like, yo, this guy, he could do anything. And I was a little disappointed that he wasn't used a little bit more for Falcone. I thought he did a good job, and I was like, yo, I could have saw more of that. But I get why. I get it. It was just a little disappointing. Maybe we'll see him. Oh no, no, he died. Never mind. I was gonna say maybe we see him after he gets arrested, but he's dead. I totally forgot.
Yeah, no one's really dead in comic book movies.
I think in
You
this
know who would have been
universe they
good if
are.
he was still alive? Alan Rickman.
Yes, yes, he would have been great. He would have been great. Alan Rickman, R.I.P. Man. But yeah, like Falcone
So
was
you want to
great.
see Mr. Freeze. All right, so all right, you know what? Let's test your Batman knowledge a little bit. Pick a non-known one. All right, like one that's just everyone's like, oh yeah, Dr. Freeze, this, that. Like pick one that people really don't.
So I got two, but I think people are just going to be like, "Oh, it's just another serial killer." Victor Zaz or Calendar Man. And you could make
Why?
him like a serial killer who picks a specific date on each day, and then on the 30th day of the month, he's going to do something even bigger. Maybe he uses bombs, and maybe he's going to blow something up. If you don't figure it out by the 30th, all hell's going to break loose.
He's the one that also does. Doesn't he do the serial killings where he would like leave notes on people's bodies and then he would classic music? Who's that? Oh, that's Professor Pygo, I think. Pygo or whatever his name is. Let me look.
I don't know.
Pig,
Batman has a
Professor
lot
Pig.
of
He
like
has the
serial
pig
killers.
mask.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I know what you're talking about. But Batman has a lot of serial killers in his rogues gallery. I want more of like that noir thriller type stuff. And you can do it with this Batman. I think you should. I think you should keep it separate from the
So
DCU
who's the other one that you picked? I'm sorry, Calendar Man. Who?
and Victor Zsasz, who's just a straight up
Victor.
killer who cares nothing about no one. He's just a straight up killer in the Batman universe.
You know who I want? I'm going to pick two as well. I'm
What?
going to pick the ventriloquist.
Okay, okay. That's a
You
good one.
know, that's a good one for this theme.
Yes.
For this type of Batman, that's perfect, I think.
Now I want to see that more than anything because that's such a good pick, especially for this.
Hugo Strange.
Hugo Strange, especially because we got Arkham Asylum already. He could show up at any time.
I know, guys, I'm using my Batman knowledge, but it's just, I think those two would be perfect for this type of
Hmm.
Batman that we're at, right? Because let's be real. You want to have like guys that you just want to take down with brute force. Like, obviously, they're going down. Let's just use the puzzle solving, let's use the wit type of thing. I love that. Let's stick with that theme.
Yes, let's lean into it even more. And that's her name. I'm an idiot. She was an Arkham. In this movie, Batman's mother was an Arkham, and then she married a Wayne. Okay, there. I forgot the name, the last name.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah,
Remember?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Okay.
forgot the name.
I know this is like an alternate, so it is canon, but it's the alternate reality canon, right?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that how
Like,
that's going? So the Joker is no longer, is the Joker canon? Is it not? Is it part of this?
well, remember he was in the deleted scene. Did you see that scene? The Joker, played by Keegan something. Ben Keegan. Ben Keegan is his first name. I know his last
Really?
name's Keegan, but the Irish actor who played in the Eternals, um,
Shit,
he
I can't
played like
remember
the
how to
emo
do it.
guy in the Eternals. But yeah, and he was also in Dunkirk. But he played Barry Keegan, who also apparently has some issues outside of the camera, apparently. But
We just get some normal people who are not beating up on women just to.
I'm not saying he beat up on women, but I just know he has some issues going on. But Barry Keegan, he was in the deleted scene. He played the Joker. Oh, and you said you didn't see that. So
No,
I'll just say for the
just tell
audience
me.
out
I mean,
there,
I can watch it at a later date. It doesn't
I'm a
bother me.
little tired of the Joker. I'll just say that. I'm a little tired of getting these different iterations of the Joker. To be honest, I'm even a little tired of Hollywood keep revamping Batman or Superman. Okay, some of these characters just need to go to bed for a little bit, and then after the universe is all cooked and ready to go, we can wake them back up. But some of these characters are just being used, and
But I
there's
do like this.
another
I think it's
Batman
worth
animated
it.
series, huh?
I do like this. This Batman's I think is worth it, but I think you're right. They're just Zack Snyder's version. Like I'm not trying to go off onto another tangent, but Zack Snyder did a really good job when he brought in Martian Manhunter. I'm like, finally, how long did it take to actually bring a wonderful character in who's as strong as Superman? Because
Even
Superman's
stronger.
like
I,
eight,
I'll
probably, yeah.
debate anybody. He's stronger than Superman.
Yeah, but I mean that's true, and that's the reason why they did his weakness is the fear of fire because he was too OP.
In the new 52, it's the fear fire. In the original, it's
It's
actual fire.
actual fire, right?
I'm like, so is that a DC thing where everybody has to have one little element that trumps their whole power set?
Because it's too strong.
Because their characters are too strong. That's why. But
Superman, but then when Superman dies and they throw him in the sun, kryptonite doesn't affect him. He's like, and that's when the whole injustice thing comes through because literally nothing can beat him.
yeah, I, yeah.
And then you got to throw him into an alternate reality type of thing. Just to...
We'll throw you in this universe. It's a dead universe anyway. Leave us alone. Bye bye.
So, is this going to be a trilogy? Or is this just going to be two movies? I can't imagine making two movies and that a third.
Well, the thing is, Hollywood did have a obsession with trilogies in like the early 2000s and 2010s. Now Hollywood has an obsession with franchises, and franchises don't have just trilogies. They don't have just three movies. You see it with John Wick. It has a fourth movie, a fifth one coming out, a spin-off, a TV show. This is what
Yeah, because
franchises
Keanu
do.
Reeves, John Wick's not dead.
Debatable. I don't think he's dead either, but it's debatable. But
What about
it's
Transformers? How many of those been out?
dear God. I will see that new Transformers though. But
That looks good. Or the Fast movies. There's been 10.
you see what I'm saying? Hollywood doesn't care about trilogies anymore. Hollywood wants franchises where they can spin off. They can have spin-offs, they can have TV shows, they can have video games, they can have novels, they can have comic books.
Of ideas that are 70 years old. That's the issue. We need new stuff. Like that's why Avatar was such a breath of fresh air because
Mhm.
it's new, And how are you going to possibly make a spin-off from Avatar? But I'm
I
just giving
think
you
he
as an
is though, isn't
example,
he?
right? He's making like three more, but
Well, yeah, they're not really spin-offs. They're just
no,
telling
you're
the
right.
stories.
I think we're at a point now. It's like, look, like we appreciate what they did. Just don't overdo it with this one. All right, three's fine. Like that's good. It tells a story that gives you ample time to kind of build the character in like each phase of the Batman career type of thing. You know what I mean?
There's a reason why
Personally,
people like three. There's a reason why all major religions consider three the number of completion. The brain aesthetically likes three. Beginning, middle, end. Okay, don't be like One Piece and have 1,000 episodes and you're still going on. That's right. I'm talking to you, all the weebs out there who love One Piece, whatever. But like every good story has a beginning, middle, and end. Let's keep it that way. Let's stop doing all these prequels. The new John Wick show called The Continental is a prequel to John Wick, and I'm just like, oh,
oh
why
my
do we do
god.
this? Why do we do this? It might be great. I might be wrong, but why do we do this? This whole let's look at how
I want to say,
everything
oh my
started.
god, like the guy from Bob's Burgers. He's like, oh my god. That's I just that's how
I'm
I
just
feel with
like,
this all this. Like, come on, guys, like new stuff. We need new stuff. All right, I know, we're in a writer's strike, and it's we're screwed for a while in terms of good content, but we need some originality. I know the pandemic made things lazy for people, and they're willing to ingest anything, but we need a we need a Tiger King equivalent type of stuff new that's going on. Something that's just crazy and fantastic, and just like you can roll with it. You know what I mean? Because that was exciting. Something new that people would watch.
so I
By the
got one
way,
last
Fubar's
question.
good.
Oh,
Fubar's good.
Fubar's
You should
good,
watch it.
really?
Fantastic,
It looked like a hack to me, but
bro. Nah, Arnold is a gem in there.
Arnold's back, baby. He's
I
back.
love him.
But I have one last question to close this out. So we're definitely getting the sequel. We're probably gonna get, I think, max. I'm calling it now. I think we're gonna get 4 movies out of this. So what do you think they're gonna call the sequels? Because it's not gonna be the Batman 2, the Batman 3. Do you really think they're gonna keep calling it the Batman? Because the Dark Knight trilogy started out as Batman Begins, then the Dark Knight, then the Dark Knight Rises, and they call it the Dark Knight trilogy. Do you think they're going to switch up the name of this Batman, of the Batman titles, or they're going to just keep the Batman Chapter 2, the Batman Part 3, the Batman 3, or something? Like, I don't know.
Oh, they would have to have some kind of hint of the villain. So if it's gonna be Clayface, it'd just say like it's the Room of Despair or something. I don't know,
The
something
Batman
stupid.
facial, something like
That's more of a porno than anything. No, you're right. Titling is important. Here's the thing. I think they would probably want to keep it episodic and anthology type of way. So it's probably going to be boring.
The
And
Batman Episode 2.
probably,
The Batman is
what else would you
everything
do?
that Gotham should have
How
been.
else? Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
how else are you going to label this?
I would definitely do a different title change because what's oh yeah, they did come out with a title for it, The Joker 2. It was like the fantastical something something of Harley Quinn.
So
And I'm like,
I thought
of
it was like
course they went
twins
in
of
that
something.
direction. Hmm?
I thought it was the twins of something, twins of destruction. Or
Oh, I'm mixing up 2 different Harley Quinn movies. My bad. Because I'm thinking of Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn, where it was like the fantastical
well, by the way,
something
I'm just curious. Where
emancipation.
does that go amongst all of these? Is that normal canon? Is that just a standalone? Like, what's the deal with that one?
So they're doing what I said they should have done from day one. Instead of trying to compete with Marvel, what they should have done is just do separate movies for characters instead of a shared universe and make it like an Elseworld. Because DC had Elseworld stories. So um so they have their universe that James Gunn is making right now.
I
And
think
then
he's
they're
going
gonna
to
have
ruin it.
Elseworld movies like the Batman, the
I
Joker.
feel it. I
So
feel it. James Gunn's going to ruin this whole thing.
really I disagree.
It's
But
already
that's
ruined. But what I'm saying is that he's going to make it a joke in terms of this vision that you want. I look, I'm pivoting for a reason, and I just feel like all these firings, like DC had the right idea for the most part in terms of casting. They just did a really bad job getting the right people to make the stuff. The really only good DC movie was the first
true.
Wonder Woman, and that fell flat after the other ones because they just decided to go off on a crazy.
Man of Steel was dope.
Man of Steel was good, but that's different.
That's true. That was the first one before they even made a universe.
Exactly. Exactly? That's what I'm saying. Like when they started, like, you know what, we're gonna do Avengers S type of universe. Man of Steel was not part of that yet.
No, they just like mushed it
We
in
thought
there.
those Supermans were going to be its own thing.
Yeah, they did. That's why
And then
Zack
they
Snyder did
forced
it in
it.
the direction that he did.
Exactly. Zack Snyder did a great job. But one thing that I do like that I like about the Flash, who's the guy that plays Zod? What's his name?
Oh, Michael Shannon.
Fantastic. First off,
Yeah,
why he isn't like the villain for DC, like the Thanos equivalent. They need to do that if they're going to make this a universe.
bring him back.
Firing Henry Cavill not for Superman is dumb.
Yeah,
It's stupid because he's got the part down perfectly. And who else could even pretend to play this guy now? Like you're replacing someone who did the part so well, and the only two, and since they're part of the universe now, which I'm not counting it as, where those movies were so exceptionally well made. It's like when Kevin Costner goes in into the Twister and he tells him to stop, don't save him, or love that moment, or the moment when you got the cascading barge and he's like in the fire, and the guys are like, "What the heck is this?" Like, it's just, I love that.
Yeah,
Why don't you have these type of elements? I just don't think. I think Gunn's going to want to try to make everything so connected. It's ruining the appeal of why we like these heroes individually.
that's
What
true,
super
man.
what villain in DC really could unite all these guys? Like, Superman can take anyone out by himself. Why do you need 8 other people? I'm serious. The
That
Avengers are a
that is
little
the
different
plight
because
of
there's
DC characters that I've been saying for years. Don't get me wrong, I'm a DC fan, but I'm like, you guys are literally gods. And then you have one little element that destroys you. Like, and then every battle you're destroying the city. Like, your characters are too powerful, they're not relatable. And that's the problem. Now you can get a good writer to make them relatable, but it's like DC characters are like everybody who's an alien is like god level power set. If they're very powerful, let's make this character. Let's give him these powers, all these powers, and we'll just explain, oh, he's just a Martian, or he's just from Venus, or he's from this. That's DC lore basically. And
all right. I'm curious then. Before we go, then, what makes you think so? What makes you optimistic then? Give me
via
any
James
hint that
Gunn,
James Gunn's going to have this like cleared up.
because James Gunn really is a storyteller,
Hmm.
and James Gunn can't do this alone. So I feel like James Gunn's best movies have been when he's writing with another co-writer. For example, Guardians of the Galaxy 1, the best one, he had co-writers, specifically Nicole Perlman, who's a great writer. And then the last two and three, I feel like are the weakest, and that's because he wrote them by himself. He can't write a whole universe by himself. He can't write every single movie by himself. Let's say that. He can write the
Zack
outline
Snyder can
for
do it.
he can write the outline. Well, Zack Snyder, that's a whole different discussion. I think he's a better action director than he is a writer, but he's still a great director writer. But James Gunn can't write every single movie individually, and he's going to have other collaborators. And I think that's when James Gunn is at his best. And we're talking about a guy who's been in the industry for the longest time, where he's written everything from Scooby Doo to Brightburn to Human Centipede. This guy has range. He knows what he's doing. If you just give him the tools and the right people to help him with it, he's gonna flourish, I think.
So is he going to keep up with Peacemaker then?
Yeah, he already said he is.
I love Peacemaker.
I love it too. I
He
love that
needs to
whole
stick with
riff he
stuff
has.
like that. I just don't think he can do a whole universe that's going to keep everything connected, because what they're doing is that they're saying they're retconning everything.
Yeah.
And this is the third time they've done that, I think.
I
Right?
know, and
Second,
sometimes they
third
would
time.
soft retcon half the universe with like these Harley Quinn movies with the Harley Quinn movie and stuff like that. They would just soft retcon half the universe and
DC is like the Catholic Church with the Bible in the 1500s. You're like, we don't like this book. We're going to just take this out.
well then
And
just
then we'll put something else in.
we'll disregard Leviticus and Numbers and we'll just follow these books. they're
This
just
doesn't make sense. Just forget it.
they're just picking stuff out. But we're being facetious. But you know, this was another good discussion. The
Yes,
Batman's a great movie. We loved it.
definitely.
What do you guys think? And we out of here, man. Be creative, my nomads. Peace.
Hugs and kisses.